Welcome to Storytales. Please like this video and subscribe to Storytales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. John Rourke turned his pickup truck into the driveway 2 days ahead of schedule. The logistics run to Memphis had wrapped up faster than expected, and he was eager to surprise Ellie with the small wooden horse he'd carved during downtime at the warehouse. The house looked normal from the outside, lawn mowed, mailbox empty, Shiloh's car absent from the driveway. He found his keys and pushed through the front door. "Ellie, Daddy's home." The silence hit him first. Then the smell, pine sol, mixed with something else he couldn't place. He dropped his duffel bag and walked toward the kitchen, work boots heavy on the hardwood. She was on her hands and knees, scrubbing the kitchen floor with a brush meant for toilets. Her dark hair hung in tangles around her face, and her pink pajamas were soaked through with cleaning solution. She froze when she heard his footsteps. "Ellie." John crouched down, keeping his voice soft. "What are you doing, sweetheart?" She looked up with red-rimmed eyes. When she saw him, her bottom lip trembled. "Daddy." "Yeah, baby. I'm home early." He reached for the brush, but she pulled it back. "I can't stop. Mom said if I cleaned everything perfect, she might let me come next time." John felt something cold settle in his chest. "Next time to where?" "The park. With the rides." Ellie's voice was barely a whisper. "Mom said Cora gets to go because she's a good girl. I have to prove I can be good too." He took the brush from her small hands and set it aside. Her knees were scraped raw, little specks of blood mixing with the cleaning solution. "When did Mom leave?" "Yesterday morning. She said she'd be back by dinner, but..." Ellie wiped her nose with the back of her hand. "I waited. I made a sandwich, but I wasn't supposed to use the good bread." John pulled his daughter against his chest, feeling her tiny body shake. "Yesterday morning. She'd been alone for nearly 24 hours. Where's your phone? Did you try calling Mom?" "She took it. Said I lost phone privileges." Ellie's voice was muffled against his shirt. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I try to be good." John carried her to the kitchen table and examined her knees. The cuts weren't deep, but they were fresh. He found a first aid kit and cleaned the wounds while Ellie sat perfectly still, like she was afraid any movement might get her in more trouble. "What else did Mom tell you to clean?" "Everything." Ellie pointed to the refrigerator. John stood and walked over. Taped to the freezer door was a handwritten list in Shiloh's familiar script. Punishment list for Ellie. Scrub all floors, hands and knees. Clean both bathrooms, toilet brush. Wash windows inside and out. Organize garage, no TV. No books, no toys until finished, no snacks. 1 meal per day. If completed perfectly, might be allowed on family trips. John read it twice, his jaw tightening with each line. Family trips. With another man's child while his own daughter scrubbed floors like a servant. "Daddy, are you mad at me?" He turned back to Ellie, who was watching him with those big brown eyes that looked exactly like his own. "No, baby, I'm not mad at you. Not even a little bit. But Mom said..." Mom was wrong. John folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket. "You hungry?" Ellie nodded quickly. "Let's get you fed and cleaned up. Then we'll watch some cartoons." "I'm not allowed." "You're allowed." John lifted her onto the kitchen counter. "You're allowed to be a kid in your own house." While Ellie ate grilled cheese and tomato soup, John called his supervisor. "Mike, it's John. I need to take some personal leave." "No, everything's fine. Family situation." "Yeah, I'll call you tomorrow." He hung up and watched his daughter eat. She took small, careful bites, like she was afraid the food might disappear. When was the last time she'd eaten a real meal? "Ellie, what did you do yesterday?" "After Mom left, I cleaned, and I watched the door." She sipped her soup. "I thought maybe you'd come home early. You waited by the door, on the couch. I could see the driveway better from there." She set down her spoon. "Daddy, am I going to live with Mom and Kaylin and Cora now?" John went very still. "Who's Kaylin?" "Mom's friend. Cora's daddy. Mom says Cora is what a real daughter looks like." Ellie's voice was matter-of-fact, like she was reciting a grocery list. "She doesn't cry or make messes or ask for things." "And where did Mom say this?" "Lots of times. She says if I was more like Cora, maybe people would want to keep me around." John felt his hands clench into fists under the table. He forced his voice to stay level. "What else does Mom say about Cora?" "That she's prettier and smarter and knows how to act like a lady." Ellie finished her soup. Mom says maybe if I practice being more like her, I might get to be their real daughter too. The kitchen felt like it was closing in around him. John stood and walked to the sink, gripping the edge until his knuckles went white. 8 years old. His baby girl was 8 years old, and Shiloh was already preparing her to be replaced. Daddy? Did I say something wrong? John turned around and forced a smile. No, sweetheart. You didn't say anything wrong. You did exactly right by telling me. After Ellie fell asleep on the couch during her third episode of cartoons, John retrieved his laptop. He rarely used social media, but Shiloh lived on it. Every meal, every outfit, every thought broadcasted to her circle of followers that he scrolled through her recent posts. 3 from yesterday, all at Adventure Peak Amusement Park. The first showed Shiloh with her arms around a tall man with graying temples and a little blonde girl who couldn't be older than 6. Finally, a perfect family day at Adventure Peak. Kaylin spoils us rotten. 43 likes. 12 comments about how happy she looked. The second post was a video of the blonde girl Cora on a carousel horse. Shiloh's voice narrated, "My girl is so brave. Look at her go. My girl. Not our girl. My girl." The third post made John's blood run cold. It was a selfie of all 3 of them at dinner, some upscale restaurant with cloth napkins and candles. Shiloh's caption read, "Date night with my 2 favorite people. Finally feels like we're a real family. Some kids just fit better than others. Hashtag blessed hashtag new family hashtag Real Family Day." John stared at the timestamp. Posted at 7:43 p.m. yesterday. While Ellie was sitting alone in their house, eating bread crusts and scrubbing floors, Shiloh was calling another man's child her real family. He scrolled through the comments. Shiloh's friends gushing about how cute Cora was, how happy Shiloh looked, how perfect they seemed together. Not one person asked about Ellie. John clicked on Kaylin's profile. Kaylin Maddox, age 40, married to someone named Juno. His latest post showed expensive cars, exotic vacations, and multiple photos with Shiloh that went back months. In every picture, Shiloh looked like a different person hairstyled, makeup perfect, wearing clothes John had never seen before. He found older posts with Kaylin's actual wife, Juno, and their daughter Cora. But those had stopped around the time Shiloh started appearing. John wasn't a detective, but he didn't need to be. The timeline was clear. John closed the laptop and checked on Ellie. She was curled up with her stuffed rabbit, the one Shiloh had tried to throw away last month because it was too babyish. Her knees were bandaged now, but he could still see the faint outline of bruising around the cuts. He thought about all the times Shiloh had criticized Ellie. The way she'd roll her eyes when their daughter asked for help with homework. The constant comparisons to other children. The cutting remarks about Ellie being too sensitive or too needy. John had always thought it was just Shiloh's way of pushing Ellie to be better. Now he realized it was something else entirely. Shiloh didn't see their daughter as her child anymore. She saw her as an obstacle to the new life she wanted. John carried Ellie to her bedroom and tucked her in. She stirred slightly when he kissed her forehead. "Daddy, right here, baby. You won't leave again, will you? Not for a long time. Promise." "I promise." John waited until her breathing grew deep and even, then walked outside to his neighbor's house. Rhett Crane was in his garage, working on an old motorcycle. The prosthetic leg made some tasks harder, but Rhett never complained. He'd lost a limb to an IED in Afghanistan. Same war where John had served, different unit. "Johnny boy, you're back early." Rhett looked up from the engine. "How was Memphis?" "It was fine." "Rhett, I need to ask you something." Something in John's tone made Rhett set down his wrench. "What's going on? Did you see Shiloh leave yesterday?" "Yeah, around 9 in the morning. Had her fancy car loaded up with overnight bags." Rhett wiped his hands on a rag. "Why?" "She left Ellie alone. For over 24 hours. Rhett's face darkened. "Jesus, John. Where was she?" "Amusement park. With another man and his kid." John handed Rhett his phone, showing the social media posts. Rhett scrolled through them, his expression growing harder with each image. "This is some sick shit, brother. Using your kid like this. I found Ellie scrubbing floors. Shiloh left her a punishment list." John showed him the paper. "Look at this." Rhett read it twice. This isn't discipline. This is abuse. I know. What are you going to do? John looked back at his house, where his daughter was finally sleeping safely. I'm going to end this. You need help? Maybe. Depends how far she pushes. Rhett nodded. Vanessa and I are here for whatever you need. That little girl doesn't deserve this. John walked back home and spent the next hour documenting everything. He photographed Ellie's injuries, the punishment list, the empty refrigerator where Shiloh had removed most of the food. He screenshot every social media post from the past 6 months, building a timeline of Shiloh's affair and neglect. Then he called his security system company and upgraded to cameras in every room. It would take them 2 days to install, but it was worth the wait. At midnight, John was still awake when he heard Shiloh's car in the driveway. He moved to the living room window and watched her stumble toward the front door, obviously drunk. She was wearing a dress he'd never seen, shoes that probably cost more than his monthly salary. The front door opened, and she kicked off her heels. John, what are you doing home? She tried to sound casual, but her words slurred slightly. Trip finished early. Oh, she glanced toward the kitchen, probably looking for signs that Ellie had completed her punishment list. How's Ellie? Asleep. Did she finish her chores? John stood up slowly. You mean did she finish scrubbing our floors with a toilet brush while you were playing house with another man's kid? Shiloh went very still. I don't know what you're talking about. Kaylin Maddox. Cora. Adventure Peak. John pulled out his phone and showed her the posts. Ring any bells? She tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. Those are just friends, John. You're being paranoid. Friends don't call other people's children my girl. You're taking this out of context. Our daughter was alone for 24 hours. No food, no contact, scrubbing floors until her knees bled. John's voice was perfectly calm. What context makes that okay? Shiloh's face flushed. Ellie exaggerates everything. She's dramatic. She's 8. She needs to learn responsibility. She needs a mother who doesn't abandon her for another family. The words hung in the air between them. Shiloh opened her mouth, then closed it. For a moment, John thought she might apologize, might show some hint of the woman he'd married. Instead, she lifted her chin. I don't have to explain myself to you. You're right, John said. You don't. He walked to the kitchen table and picked up an envelope he'd prepared while waiting. But you'll have to explain yourself to a judge. Shiloh took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were emergency custody papers, already filed with the family court. What is this? Emergency petition for sole custody of Ellie. Court date is set for Friday. The papers fluttered to the floor as Shiloh stared at him. You can't be serious. Deadly serious. John, this is crazy. We can work this out. No. John picked up the papers and set them on the table. We can't. Shiloh tried to step closer, but John moved away. Honey, please. I made a mistake. I was just having some fun. Fun. John's voice was still quiet, but something dangerous had crept into it. You call abandoning our daughter fun. She's fine. She's traumatized. She thinks you're going to replace her with Corin. Cora, Shiloh corrected automatically, then realized her mistake. Right? Cora, the daughter you actually want. Shiloh's face crumpled, but John felt nothing. No sympathy, no regret, no urge to comfort her. That part of him had died somewhere between finding Ellie on her knees and reading about real families on social media. John, please. I love Ellie. No, you don't. John walked toward the stairs. If you did, she wouldn't be scared to exist in her own house. Where are you going? To bed. Tomorrow I'm moving out with Ellie until this is settled. You can't take her from me. John stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked back. I'm not taking her from you, Shiloh. You already threw her away. He climbed the stairs, leaving his wife alone with the custody papers and the weight of what she'd chosen in his bedroom. John opened his laptop and began typing an email to the best family lawyer in Nashville. He'd done his research during the 3 hours he'd spent waiting for Shiloh to come home. The subject line read, Emergency Custody Case Child Abandonment and Emotional Abuse. John attached all his documentation and hit send. Then he walked down the hall to Ellie's room and stood in the doorway, watching her sleep. We're done pretending, he whispered. John woke at 5:30, same as always. Military habits died hard. Ellie was still asleep, but he could hear Shiloh moving around downstairs, probably trying to figure out how serious he was about the custody filing. She was about to find out. John showered and dressed in his best jeans and button-down shirt. He wanted to look respectable when the process server arrived. Then he made coffee and waited at the kitchen table with his laptop open at T7:15. Shiloh appeared in the doorway, wearing yesterday's dress and yesterday's makeup. She looked like she hadn't slept. "John, we need to talk." "No, we don't. This is insane. You can't destroy our family over one mistake." "One mistake?" John didn't look up from his laptop. "Which mistake? The affair, the abandonment, or the emotional abuse?" "I never abused. You left an 8-year-old alone for 24 hours. You made her scrub floors until she bled. You told her she wasn't a real daughter." John finally looked at her. "What do you call that?" Shiloh sat down across from him, tried to look sincere. "Okay, I made some bad choices, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I went to the bank this morning." "What?" "Closed our joint account. Open a new one in my name only. All your cards are canceled." The color drained from Shiloh's face. "You can't do that." "Already did. The house is in my name, remember? You insisted on that when we bought it." John sipped his coffee. "Said it would be better for taxes." "John, please. Your car payment bounced this morning. So did your credit card bills." Shiloh stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "You bastard. You can't cut me off." "Can and did. I'll call my lawyer." "With what money?" John gestured to her designer dress. "That outfit probably cost more than I make in a week. Hope it was worth it." Shiloh stared at him like she was seeing a stranger. "This isn't you, John. You're not cruel. I'm not cruel to people who deserve my protection." John closed his laptop. "You stopped deserving that the moment you chose another man's child over our daughter." "I never chose. Finally feels like we're a real family." John quoted her social media post word for word. "Some kids just fit better than others." Shiloh went white. "You don't understand the context. The context is you were calling another child your real daughter while ours was home alone, scared and hungry." The doorbell rang. John stood and walked to the front door, leaving Shiloh frozen in the kitchen that a young man in a cheap suit stood on the porch with an official-looking envelope. "John Rourke, that's me. Process server. I have documents for Shiloh Rourke. She's in the kitchen." John led the server inside. Shiloh was still standing by the fallen chair, looking lost. "Shiloh Rourke, yes, you've been served." The man handed her the envelope and left. Shiloh opened it with shaking hands. Inside were restraining order papers, temporary, but effective immediately. She was prohibited from being alone with Ellie pending the custody hearing. A restraining order? Her voice was barely a whisper. "Temporary emergency order. The judge signed it this morning based on my evidence." "Evidence?" John pulled out his phone and played a recording. Ellie's small voice filled the kitchen. "Mom says if I lived with them, I could be sisters with Cora, and that you're too boring to keep kids happy." Shiloh lunged for the phone, but John pulled it away. "That's not." She's confused. "Is she?" "Because I have 6 months of recordings, Shiloh. Every cruel thing you said to our daughter, every comparison to other children, every time you made her feel like she wasn't good enough. You recorded me. I recorded a mother emotionally abusing her child." Shiloh collapsed into a kitchen chair. "John, please. I know I screwed up, but this is too far. She's my daughter too. Not anymore." The words hit her like a physical blow. She started crying real tears this time, not the manipulative ones she used when she wanted something. "Please don't take her from me. I can change. You had 8 years to change. Instead, you got worse. I'll break it off with Kaylin. I'll delete social media. I'll do whatever you want." John sat down across from her. "Do you know what Ellie asked me yesterday?" Shiloh shook her head. "She asked if she was going to live with you and Kaylin and Cora now." An 8-year-old was preparing to be abandoned by her mother. John's voice was steady, but his eyes were hard as steel. "She's not a negotiation point, Shiloh. She's not something you get to trade away when you find a better option. I never wanted to trade her away." "Then why did you leave her alone?" "Because." Shiloh wiped her nose. "Because Kaylin said family time should be just us. He said Ellie would feel left out, being the only kid without both parents there." John stared at her. "So you chose his comfort over her safety." It wasn't supposed to be that long. I was going to be home by dinner. But you weren't. You were having date night with your real family, while our daughter waited by the window. Shiloh flinched. Don't use my words against me. Your words? Those are your feelings, Shiloh. Finally honest for once. Footsteps on the stairs interrupted them. Ellie appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing her favorite pajamas with cartoon cats on them. Daddy? Why is everyone yelling? We're not yelling, baby. Just talking. John held out his arms, and Ellie ran to him. Shiloh reached for her daughter. Ellie, honey, don't. John's voice was sharp. You can't be alone with her. Court order. What does that mean? Ellie looked between her parents. It means mommy made some bad choices, and now she needs to prove she can be better before she can take care of you again. Ellie nodded solemnly, like this made perfect sense. Because of the punishment list? Shiloh winced. Sweetheart, that was just. Ellie, go get dressed. We're going to Uncle Rhett's house for breakfast. Okay, Daddy. Ellie kissed his cheek and ran back upstairs. When she was gone, Shiloh tried one more time. John, I'm begging you. Don't do this. I'm not doing anything. You did this. John stood up. You chose another family. Now you get to live with that choice. Rhett and Vanessa Crane's kitchen smelled like bacon and coffee. Ellie sat at their table, carefully eating pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse while Vanessa braided her hair. Your daddy says you're going to stay with us for a few days, Vanessa said, weaving the dark strands into neat plaits. Is that okay? Ellie's voice was small. More than okay, sweetheart. We love having you here. John sat across from Rhett, nursing his second cup of coffee. Through the window, he could see his house next door. Shiloh's car was gone. She leave? Rhett asked. About an hour ago. Probably went to cry to her boyfriend. You think she'll fight this? Oh, she'll fight. Question is how dirty she'll play. Vanessa finished Ellie's hair and sent her to watch cartoons in the living room. When she was out of earshot, she sat down with the men. I've been keeping track, she said quietly. The times Shiloh left Ellie alone, the things she said to that baby. It's been getting worse for months. You willing to testify? John asked. Absolutely. That woman doesn't deserve to be called a mother. Rhett nodded. Same here. I got security footage going back 6 months. Shows every time Shiloh left for days, every time you had to come home early because Ellie was alone. John felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. He wasn't alone in this. There's something else, Vanessa said. My cousin works at Ellie's school. She's the guidance counselor. Monica Webb, that's her. She's been worried about Ellie for weeks. Says she's been withdrawn, anxious. Keeps asking if she's done something wrong. John's jaw tightened. Shiloh's been poisoning her mind. Monica would testify too, if you need her. She's documented everything the behavior changes, the things Ellie said. What kind of things? Vanessa glanced toward the living room, where Ellie was laughing at a cartoon. She asked if there was something wrong with her, because her mommy liked other kids better. Asked if she was broken somehow. The words hit John like a punch to the gut. His 8-year-old daughter thought she was broken because her mother preferred someone else's child. That settles it, John said. I'm going for full custody. No shared time, no visitation. I want her completely away from Ellie until she proves she's changed. That's a big ask, Rhett warned. Courts usually favor shared custody, not when there's documented abuse, and not when the mother chose another family. John's phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. You need to call me. This is about Shiloh. Juno. John showed the message to Rhett and Vanessa. Who's Juno? Vanessa asked. Kaylin's wife. Rhett whistled low. This should be interesting. John stepped outside to make the call. Juno Maddox answered on the first ring. Mr. Rourke? Thank you for calling. We need to talk. About what? About what your wife and my husband have been doing behind our backs. Her voice was crisp, educated, angry. I found text messages. Lots of them. I'm listening. Kaylin's been telling Shiloh that Cora needs a mother figure. Someone more maternal than me. Juno's laugh was bitter. Apparently, I'm too focused on my career to be a proper mother. And Shiloh bought that. Hook, line, and sinker. The texts go back 8 months, Mr. Rourke. They've been planning this. John felt ice form in his stomach. Planning what? A new family. Kaylin wants to leave me and take Cora. Shiloh wants to prove she's better with children than you are. They've been using our kids as auditions for their fantasy life. Jesus. There's more. I found receipts. Kalen's been buying your wife clothes, jewelry, paying for trips. He spent $12,000 on her last month alone. Why are you telling me this? Because I don't destroy families for sport. Juno's voice was steel. And because what they're doing to your daughter is sick. I've seen the social media posts. Calling Cora her real daughter while ignoring her actual child? That's not maternal instinct. That's something else entirely. What do you want from me? I want to help you bury them both. I got financial records, text messages, emails. Everything you need to prove your wife has been planning to abandon your daughter. John closed his eyes. The betrayal ran deeper than he'd thought. This wasn't just an affair, it was a calculated plan to replace their family with a different one. I'll send you everything tonight, Juno continued. In return, I want your wife's testimony when I take Kalen to court. He's not getting custody of Cora after this. Deal, Mr. Rourke. Your daughter is lucky to have a father who fights for her. I hope my Cora will be as fortunate. The line went dead. John stood in the Crane's backyard, staring at his house and thinking about the woman he'd married. The woman who'd planned to throw away their daughter like she was trading in an old car for a newer model. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was his lawyer. Mr. Rourke, I got your evidence packet. We need to meet immediately. What your wife did, this isn't just neglect. This is systematic psychological abuse. How bad? Bad enough that I think we can get emergency sole custody before the week is out. Can you be here in an hour? On my way. John walked back inside where Ellie was curled up on Vanessa's couch, finally looking like a normal kid instead of a scared servant. Uncle Rhett, I have to go into town for a few hours. Can you watch Ellie? Course, brother. Take all the time you need. John knelt by the couch and kissed his daughter's forehead. I'll be back soon, okay? Okay, Daddy. Are you going to make sure Mom can't make me clean anymore? The question broke his heart and strengthened his resolve at the same time. Yeah, baby. That's exactly what I'm going to do. John spent 3 hours with his lawyer, David Chun. Chun was a former prosecutor who specialized in family law and had a reputation for winning even the ugliest cases. This is substantial, Chun said, reviewing John's evidence. But we need more. More what? Real-time proof. Something that shows her current state of mind, not just past behavior. Like what? Like her admitting she prefers the other child. Like her planning to abandon Ellie permanently. Like her plotting false allegations against you. John's blood chilled. You think she'll make false accusations? Mr. Rourke, your wife is about to lose everything: her daughter, her meal ticket, her fantasy life. Desperate people do desperate things. So what do? Chun leaned forward. You prepare. Document everything. Record everything legal in Tennessee one-party consent state. And you stay one step ahead of her. How? By assuming she'll try to destroy you before Friday's hearing. Meanwhile, across town, Kalen Maddox was pacing his expensive office, phone pressed to his ear. This is a disaster, Shiloh. Do you understand what this could do to my reputation? Shiloh's voice was panicked through the speaker. John blindsided me. I didn't think he had it in him. Well, he did. And now we need to make this disappear. How? Kalen, stop pacing. You need to fight back. Hard. Make him look like the bad guy. What do you mean? Think about it. Controlling husband, isolates his wife, probably abuses his kid when no one's looking. Courts eat that stuff up. There was silence on the line. Kalen, are you suggesting I'm suggesting you protect yourself. And us. By any means necessary. But John never hit me. Or Ellie. Who's going to know that? It's her word against his. Another long pause. I could say he's been getting angrier lately. More controlling. That I was scared to leave Ellie alone with him. Now you're thinking. Courts always believe the mother when it comes to abuse claims. What if they find out I'm lying? They won't. Just stick to the story and let me handle the rest. After hanging up, Kalen smiled to himself. Sometimes the simplest solutions were the most effective. John drove home with a new recording device and a sick feeling in his stomach. Chun was right, Shiloh would escalate. She always did when cornered. He picked up Ellie from the Crane's house and took her home to pack some clothes. The security system installation was scheduled for tomorrow, but he needed to start recording immediately. Daddy, can I bring my art supplies? Ellie was carefully folding her favorite sweater into a small suitcase. Of course. What are you working on? A picture of our new house. The one where it's just you and me. John's throat tightened. What makes you think we're getting a new house? Because Mom said she might not want to live with us anymore. She said Kaylin has a bigger house with a pool, and Cora has her own art room. Every word was another nail in Shiloh's coffin. John activated the recording app on his phone. When did Mom say that? Lots of times. She said maybe it would be better if I stayed with you, and she want to live with her real family. Ellie zipped up her suitcase. I don't mind, Daddy. You're better at making pancakes anyway. Ellie, did Mom ever tell you that you weren't good enough? Not exactly. She said I was different from Cora. That Cora knows how to act like a lady and doesn't cry all the time. Ellie sat on her bed. She said maybe if I practice being more like Cora, people might want to keep me around. John had to grip the door frame to steady himself. Did Mom say anything else about Cora? She said Cora is what daughters are supposed to be like. Pretty and quiet and good at taking pictures for social media. Ellie tilted her head. Mom takes lots of pictures with Cora. She never takes pictures with me anymore. Why do you think that is? Because I'm not photogenic. Mom said I always look sad in pictures, and that makes her look like a bad mom. John stopped the recording. He had enough to destroy Shiloh's case, but it felt like destroying his daughter in the process. Every revelation showed how deep the psychological damage went. Ellie, I want you to know something very important. What, Daddy? You are exactly what a daughter is supposed to be like. You're kind and smart and beautiful, and any mother would be lucky to have you. Even if I cry sometimes, especially if you cry sometimes, that means you have feelings, and feelings are important. Ellie smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her in weeks. Daddy, will you teach me how to make pancakes? The good kind, not the frozen ones. I'll teach you whatever you want to learn. They were loading the car when Shiloh pulled into the driveway. She got out slowly, like she was approaching a wild animal. John, please. Can we talk? Nothing to talk about. I brought something. She held up a piece of paper. Divorce papers. I'll sign them right now if you give me joint custody. John almost laughed. You think I negotiate my daughter's safety? It's not about safety. It's about everything. John put Ellie's suitcase in the truck. Get in the truck, Ellie. Wait. Shiloh approached her daughter. Ellie, honey, Mommy needs to ask you something. Mom, I can't talk to you alone. Daddy said so. I know, baby. But this is important. Shiloh knelt to Ellie's level. Did Daddy tell you to say bad things about Mommy? John stepped between them. Stop. Did he tell you to lie about the cleaning? About being alone? Shiloh, back off. Because if Daddy made you say those things, you could tell Mommy the truth. I won't be mad. Ellie looked confused and scared. Daddy didn't make me say anything. I just told him what happened. But maybe you remembered it wrong? Maybe you mixed up the days. Shiloh. John's voice was deadly quiet. Step away from my daughter. Our daughter. Not anymore. John opened the truck door. Get in, Ellie. As Ellie climbed into the truck, Shiloh played her last card. Fine, John. But when this is over, when the court sees what kind of man you really are, don't come crying to me. What's that supposed to mean? Shiloh smiled, but it wasn't friendly. You'll find out. John drove away with his daughter secure in the passenger seat and a recording device capturing every threat Shiloh had just made. Chun was right, she was going to escalate. But John was ready. Friday morning came gray and cold. John sat in the hallway outside Judge Holbrook's courtroom, wearing his best suit and carrying a briefcase full of evidence. Ellie was safe with the Cranes, who had strict instructions not to let Shiloh near her. Chun appeared at his elbow. You ready for this? Been ready all week. Good, because she brought a bigger gun than expected. John looked down the hallway, where Shiloh sat with a man in an expensive suit. Her lawyer looked like he charged more per hour than John made in a week. Who's paying for that? 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. Kaylin was funding Shiloh's legal fight. Of course he was. Doesn't matter, John said. Truth is truth, no matter who's paying to hide it. The bailiff called their case. Judge Holbrook was exactly what John had expected, gray-haired. No nonsense. Probably tired of hearing parents fight over children like they were possessions. Mr. Rourke, you're seeking emergency sole custody based on allegations of child abandonment and emotional abuse. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. And Mrs. Rourke, You're contesting these allegations and seeking shared custody. Correct. Yes, Your Honor. Shiloh's voice was smaller than usual, more vulnerable. Playing the part. Very well. Mr. Chun, present your evidence. Chun stood and outlined John's case methodically. The abandonment, the punishment list, the social media posts calling another child her real daughter. With each piece of evidence, Judge Holbrook's expression grew stonier. Then Chun played the recording of Ellie describing her mother's treatment. Mom says if I lived with them, I could be sisters with Cora, and that you're too boring to keep kids happy. The courtroom went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Shiloh's lawyer tried damage control. Your Honor, children often misinterpret adult conversations. Mr. Davis, Judge Holbrook's voice cut through the air like a blade. Are you suggesting this 8-year-old fabricated detailed accounts of psychological abuse? No, Your Honor, but context matters. Context. Judge Holbrook turned to Shiloh. Mrs. Rourke, did you leave your daughter alone for 24 hours while you attended an amusement park with another family? Your Honor, it wasn't supposed to be that long. Did you or did you not leave her alone? Yes, but did you create a punishment list requiring her to clean your house while you were gone? Shiloh's lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear. Your Honor, my client was going through a difficult time. Answer the question, Mrs. Rourke. Yes, I left her a list of chores. Chores that included scrubbing floors with a toilet brush until her knees bled. I didn't know she was hurt, because you weren't there. Judge Holbrook's voice could have frozen fire. Mr. Chun, do you have additional evidence? Yes, Your Honor. Text messages between Mrs. Rourke and her boyfriend planning to abandon Ellie permanently. Chun presented the evidence Juno had provided. 8 months of messages detailing Shiloh and Kaylin's plans to create a new family. Screenshots of conversations where Shiloh called Ellie baggage from my old life and not the kind of daughter I always wanted. With each message, Shiloh seemed to shrink further into her chair. The final blow was a recording from 2 days ago, Shiloh trying to coach Ellie into changing her testimony. Did Daddy tell you to say bad things about Mommy? Because if Daddy made you say those things, you can tell Mommy the truth. Judge Holbrook removed her reading glasses and stared at Shiloh for a long moment. Mrs. Rourke, in 23 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such a clear case of psychological abuse and parental alienation. You abandoned your child to play house with another family. You emotionally abused her to the point where she believes she's inherently flawed. And then you attempted to manipulate her testimony in these proceedings. Your Honor, please. I'm not finished. Judge Holbrook's voice was ice. You refer to another man's child as your real daughter while treating your own child like a servant. You plan to abandon her permanently for a lifestyle upgrade. This isn't poor judgment, Mrs. Rourke. This is cruelty. Shiloh started crying, but they were desperate tears now, not manipulative ones. Your Honor, I can change. I can be better. Perhaps. But not at your daughter's expense. Judge Holbrook signed the custody order with firm strokes. Full custody is awarded to Mr. Rourke. Mrs. Rourke is granted supervised visitation only, pending completion of parenting classes and psychological evaluation. Your Honor, Shiloh's lawyer stood. The decision is final. Counselor, Mrs. Rourke has shown herself to be a danger to this child's emotional well-being. I will not allow her to continue that damage while she decides whether she wants to be a mother or not. John felt something release in his chest, a tension he'd carried for months without realizing it. Ellie was safe. Legally, permanently safe. As they left the courtroom, Shiloh grabbed John's arm. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You can't keep her from me forever. John looked at the woman who had once been his wife, his partner, the mother of his child. Now she was just someone who had hurt his daughter and would never get the chance to do it again. I'm not keeping her from you, Shiloh. You threw her away. I'm just making sure she knows she doesn't deserve that. He walked away, leaving Shiloh standing in the courthouse hallway with her expensive lawyer and her empty threats. Outside, Chin shook his hand. Congratulations, Mr. Rourke. Your daughter's lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, John said, and meant it. Act into CT3. The Reckoning Scene 8. The counterattack. John's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. on Saturday. Unknown number, but he recognized the pattern. Shiloh had given his number to her flying monkeys. Hello, John Rourke. This is Patricia Wells from the Department of Child Services. We received a complaint about your custody situation. John sat up in bed. What kind of complaint? Allegations of parental alienation and inappropriate recording of a minor. We need to schedule a home visit. Who filed the complaint? I can't disclose that information. Are you available today? Of course. John was already getting dressed. What time? 2 o'clock. John hung up and called Chin immediately. She's going scorched earth, Chin said. Expected this. Don't worry, you're prepared. What should I do? Tell the truth. Show them your evidence. Let them interview Ellie if they want. You've got nothing to hide. John spent the morning cleaning house and preparing documents. At noon, Rhett knocked on his door. You see Facebook this morning? I don't use Facebook. Rhett held up his phone. Shiloh had posted a long, emotional message about fathers who steal children and turn them against their mothers. She'd shared articles about parental alienation, false abuse allegations, and corrupt family courts. The comments were a mixture of support and confusion. People who knew John defended him, but Shiloh's friends were rallying around her victim narrative. She's building a case in the court of public opinion, Rhett said. Good thing public opinion doesn't override court orders. But John felt uneasy. Shiloh was smart, and desperate people were dangerous. At the 2 o'clock sharp, Patricia Wells arrived. She was middle-aged, professional, carrying a clipboard and wearing the expression of someone who'd seen every family crisis imaginable. Mr. Rourke? I'm Patricia Wells, DCS. This is my colleague, James Morton. They followed John inside. The house was clean but lived in, toys scattered around the living room where Ellie had been playing. Where is your daughter now? Playing in her room. Would you like to meet her? In a moment. First, I'd like to hear your side of the recent custody proceedings. John spent 30 minutes walking them through everything: Shiloh's affair, Ellie's abandonment, the punishment list, the psychological abuse. He showed them photos, recordings, text messages. Wells took notes without comment. Morton asked clarifying questions about dates and times. The complaint alleges you coached your daughter to make false statements against her mother. The complaint is false. I have recordings of Shiloh trying to coach Ellie to change her testimony. John played the recording of Shiloh pressuring Ellie outside the courthouse. Wells and Morton exchanged glances. We'd like to speak with Ellie now, Wells said. Of course. John called upstairs. Ellie, can you come down? There are some nice people who want to meet you. Ellie appeared in the doorway, curious but not frightened. She was wearing her favorite dress, the one with sunflowers that Shiloh had called too childish for an 8-year-old. Hi, she said politely. Wells smiled. Hi, Ellie. I'm Patricia. Can we sit and talk for a few minutes? They sat in the living room. Wells had a gift for talking to children. Her voice was warm but not condescending, interested but not interrogating. Your daddy says you've been having a tough time lately. A little bit, but it's better now. Better how? I don't have to clean all the time. And Daddy makes me pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. That sounds nice. Can you tell me about the cleaning? Ellie glanced at John, who nodded encouragingly. Mom left me a list of things to clean while she was gone. But I didn't do it right, so my knees got hurt. How did your knees get hurt? The brush was hard and the floor was bumpy. I tried to be careful, but it was hard to reach everything. Wells made a note. Where was your mom while you were cleaning? At the fun park with Cora and her daddy. Mom showed me pictures on her phone. How did that make you feel? Ellie considered this seriously. Sad, but also confused. Because Mom said I couldn't go because I wasn't a real daughter like Cora. Morton leaned forward. Did your daddy tell you to say that? No. Mom said it lots of times. She said Cora was prettier and better at being a daughter. And how does your daddy make you feel? Ellie's face lit up. Safe. And like I'm good enough exactly how I am. Wells interviewed Ellie for 20 more minutes. She asked about John's parenting, about Shiloh's treatment, about her feelings and fears. Ellie answered everything honestly, without prompting from John. When they were finished, Wells asked to speak with John privately. Mr. Rourke, I want you to know that this complaint appears to be without merit. Your daughter shows no signs of coaching or alienation. In fact, she's remarkably well-adjusted considering what she's been through. So you'll close the case. We'll file our report with the court. The judge will have our recommendation by Monday. Wells packed up her clipboard. For what it's worth, you did the right thing. That little girl is lucky to have a father who protects her. After they left, John called Chun with the update. Good, but expect more attacks. This was just the opening salvo. Chun was right. Over the weekend, John received calls from 3 more agencies, all triggered by anonymous complaints. Child Protective Services, the FBI tip line, even the IRS. Every call was the same pattern. Anonymous complaint, quick investigation. Case closed when they found no evidence of wrongdoing. Shiloh was throwing everything she could think of, hoping something would stick. Monday morning, John's phone rang at dawn. This time it was Juno Maddox. Mr. Rourke, we have a problem. What now? Kalen's filed for emergency custody of Cora. He's claiming I'm an unfit mother. John sat up. Based on what? Based on my cooperation with your custody case. He says I'm vindictive and unstable. Juno's voice was tight with anger. He's also claiming you and I are having an affair. What? He hired a private investigator. Got photos of us meeting for coffee, talking on the phone. He's spinning it as evidence of an elaborate conspiracy to destroy his relationship with Shiloh. John rubbed his forehead. The attacks were getting more sophisticated. What can I do? Help me prove he's lying. I need character witnesses, evidence of his relationship with your wife. Anything that shows he's the one who's been planning family destruction. Send me whatever you need. I'll help however I can. But when John hung up, he realized Kalen's strategy was actually clever. By attacking Juno's credibility, he was trying to undermine the evidence she'd provided in John's case. If Juno was portrayed as a vindictive ex-wife manufacturing evidence, it could call John's custody victory into question. John called Chin immediately. Can I do that? Reopen my case based on attacks against Juno? They could try. But the evidence against Shiloh stands regardless of where it came from. Medical records don't lie. Recordings don't lie. Your daughter's testimony doesn't lie. But if they can muddy the waters enough, create doubt about motivations and conspiracies, they might get a hearing to reconsider. John felt sick. So we're back to square one. Not square one, but we need to be ready for a fight. The fight came sooner than expected. Tuesday afternoon, John received a summons for an emergency hearing. Shiloh and Kalen had filed a joint motion claiming new evidence of fraud and collusion in the original custody case. John read through their filing with growing disbelief. They were claiming he and Juno had conspired to manufacture evidence against both Shiloh and Kalen. They said the text messages were fabricated, the recordings were doctored, and Ellie's testimony was coached. Most audaciously, they were claiming John had bribed DCS workers to file false reports. This is insane, John told Chun. How can they make these accusations without proof? Because desperate people say desperate things. But remember, they still have to prove their claims. And we have evidence they can't explain away. Before John could respond, his phone rang. It was Vanessa. John, you need to get over here right now. I found something. 20 minutes later, John sat in the Crane's kitchen while Vanessa spread documents across the table. I've been doing some research on this Kalen character, she said. Something about him didn't sit right with me. What kind of research? Public records, marriage licenses, divorce filings, that sort of thing. Vanessa pointed to an official document. Look at this. John examined the paper. It was a marriage certificate for Kalen Maddox and Juno Whitfield, dated 3 years ago. Okay, so he was married. We knew that. But look at this. Vanessa showed him another document, or rather, the absence of one. I searched the entire Davidson County database. There's no divorce filing for Kalen Maddox. Not pending, not finalized, not even started. John went still. What are you saying? I'm saying Kalen's still married to Juno. He never filed for divorce. He's been lying to Shiloh this whole time. How does that help us? Because if Kalen was lying about being divorced, what else was he lying about? And if Shiloh believed she was entering a legitimate relationship, why didn't she verify his status? Chin smiled grimly. We're going to turn their conspiracy theory back on them. Show the court that the real conspiracy was between Shiloh and a married man planning to abandon their legal families. The emergency hearing was scheduled for Thursday morning. John arrived early with Chun and a thick folder of additional evidence they compiled over the past 2 days. Shiloh sat across the aisle with her expensive lawyer and Kalen Maddox. Kalen looked nervous, probably realizing his lies were about to catch up with him. Judge Holbrook entered looking annoyed. I understand there are allegations of fraud and collusion in a case I decided less than a week ago. This better be substantial. Shiloh's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Rourke and Mrs. Maddox conspired to fabricate evidence against my client and Mr. Maddox. What evidence? Surveillance photos showing secret meetings, phone records showing extensive contact, testimony that Mrs. Maddox had financial motivation to lie. Judge Holbrook examined the photos. Mr. Chun, do you dispute that your client met with Mrs. Maddox? Not at all, Your Honor. Mrs. Maddox contacted my client because she discovered her husband was having an affair with Mrs. Rourke. She provided evidence of that affair to help protect Mr. Rourke's daughter from further psychological abuse, and the allegation that evidence was fabricated. Chun stood and handed the judge a thick envelope. Your Honor, we have additional evidence that proves the authenticity of everything presented in the original hearing, such as bank records showing Mr. Maddox spent over $50,000 on Mrs. Rourke in the past 8 months, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, jewelry purchases, credit card statements showing Mrs. Rourke's expenses tripled during the same period. Judge Holbrook flipped through the documents. Continue. Text messages between Mrs. Rourke and Mr. Maddox going back 10 months, discussing their plans to merge households and exclude Mr. Rourke's daughter from their new family structure. Chun played several audio recordings of phone calls between Shiloh and Kalen, discussing how to handle the kid situation and phase out the baggage. And finally, Your Honor, proof that Mr. Maddox has been lying about his marital status. Chun presented certified copies of marriage records. Mr. Maddox is still legally married to Juno Maddox. He never filed for divorce. His entire relationship with Mrs. Rourke is based on fraud. The courtroom erupted. Shiloh stared at Kalen in shock. You said you were divorced. I was going to file. You've been lying to me for almost a year. Judge Holbrook banged her gavel. Order. Mr. Maddox, are you or are you not currently married to Juno Maddox? Kalen's lawyer whispered frantically in his ear. Your Honor, my client invokes his Fifth Amendment right. This is family court, counselor, not criminal court. Answer the question, Mr. Maddox. Yes, I'm still married, but we've been separated. Were you separated when you began your relationship with Mrs. Rourke? Well, no, but... So you committed adultery and lied to Mrs. Rourke about your marital status while planning to gain custody of children through fraud. Your Honor, it's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. Judge Holbrook turned to Shiloh. Mrs. Rourke, were you aware that Mr. Maddox was still married when you began planning to merge households? Shiloh was crying now ugly, desperate tears. No, he told me he was divorced. He showed me papers. What papers? Separation papers. He said they were divorce papers. Chun stood again. Your Honor, Mr. Maddox's deception of Mrs. Rourke actually supports our original case. Mrs. Rourke abandoned her daughter based on false promises from a man who was lying about his availability to create a new family. This doesn't excuse her behavior toward her child. Absolutely not, Your Honor. But it does show that Mrs. Rourke was manipulated by someone with his own agenda. Someone who's now attempting to use false accusations to cover up his fraud. Judge Holbrook reviewed all the evidence again, taking her time. The courtroom was silent except for Shiloh's quiet crying. Finally, the judge spoke. I have reviewed the allegations of fraud and collusion. I find them to be completely without merit. The evidence presented in the original hearing was authentic and substantial. Mr. Rourke's custody of his daughter is confirmed and permanent. Your Honor, Shiloh's lawyer tried to interrupt. I'm not finished. Mrs. Rourke, your supervised visitation is hereby suspended pending completion of a full psychological evaluation. You will not have contact with your daughter until a licensed psychologist determines you are capable of putting her needs before your own desires. Please, Your Honor. Mr. Maddox, I am referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of fraud and perjury. I'm also issuing a restraining order preventing you from contacting Mr. Rourke or his daughter. Judge Hallbrook signed multiple orders with firm strokes. This concludes these proceedings. Mr. Rourke, take your daughter home. As they left the courtroom, Shiloh made one last desperate attempt. John, please. I know I messed up, but she's still my daughter. John stopped and looked at her. She was still beautiful, still charming when she wanted to be. But he could see the selfishness underneath now, the calculating way she weighed every relationship against what it could give her. You chose your new daughter, Shiloh. You live with that choice. I was confused. Kaylin lied to me. Kaylin didn't make you abandon Ellie. Kaylin didn't make you call another child your real daughter. Kaylin didn't make you choose a fantasy over your own flesh and blood. I can change. Maybe, but not at Ellie's expense. Not anymore. John walked away without looking back. John found Ellie in the Crane's backyard, painting at a small easel Vanessa had set up for her. She was working on a landscape, rolling hills under a blue sky, a small house with smoke coming from the chimney. How did it go, Daddy? It went good, baby. Really good. Do I have to see Mom anymore? John knelt beside her easel. Not until you're ready. And not until she proves she can be the kind of mom you deserve. Ellie nodded seriously. I hope she can. But I'm not sad anymore if she can't. Why not? Because I have you. And Uncle Rhett and Aunt Vanessa. And I know I'm good enough now. John hugged his daughter, careful not to disturb her painting. You were always good enough, Ellie. Always. I know. But I forgot for a while. That evening, John and Ellie packed up their belongings. They were moving to a new house across town, smaller than the old one, but in a better school district. A fresh start. They loaded boxes into the truck. Shiloh's car pulled up. She sat in the driveway for a long moment, then got out and walked slowly toward them. I came to say goodbye. John positioned himself between Shiloh and Ellie, but his daughter stepped around him. Hi, Mom. Hi, baby. I wanted to tell you something important. Ellie waited. I made a lot of mistakes. Really big ones. And I hurt you, which is the worst thing I could have done. I know. I don't know if I can fix what I broke. But I want you to know that it was never your fault. You were always perfect exactly as you are. Ellie considered this. Thank you for saying that. I love you, Ellie, even though I did a terrible job showing it. I love you too, Mom. I hope you figure out how to be happy without hurting people. Shiloh started crying again, but these tears were different, full of genuine regret instead of self-pity. Me too, baby. Me too. She walked back to her car without trying to hug Ellie or asking for forgiveness she hadn't earned. John watched her drive away, feeling something like closure. Daddy, are you sad about Mom? A little. I'm sad for the person she used to be. And I'm sad it took so long for me to protect you from the person she became. But you did protect me. That's what matters. John looked at his 8-year-old daughter, wise beyond her years, resilient despite everything she'd endured, hopeful about their future together. Yeah, baby, that's what matters. 6 months later, John and Ellie were settled into their new life. The house was smaller, but full of laughter. Ellie had started art therapy and was making friends at her new school. She still had nightmares sometimes, but they were getting rarer. John found her in her room one evening, working on a drawing. What are you making? A picture for you. She held up the paper. It showed 2 stick figures holding hands in front of a house. See? That's you and me, the real family. John looked at the drawing, simple lines and bright colors, but it captured everything that mattered. He thought about the lockbox in his closet, where he kept all the important documents from their custody battle. The evidence of Shiloh's betrayal, the court orders that protected Ellie, the papers that proved he'd won. But this drawing was the real victory. Not the legal papers, but the fact that his daughter felt safe enough to create again, confident enough to call them a real family, without qualification or fear. I love it, John said. Can I put it on the refrigerator? Can you put it in your special box instead? With all the important papers. John smiled. I think that's exactly where it belongs. He folded the drawing carefully and carried it to his room. In the lockbox with the custody orders and court documents, he placed Ellie's artwork and added a label in his own handwriting. The day I became the only parent who mattered. Outside, Nashville hummed with evening traffic and ordinary life. But inside their small house, John Rourke and his daughter had everything they needed: each other, safety, and the knowledge that some families are chosen, not just born. The daughter Shiloh left behind had found her way home.